without losing the screen share thing, so that'll be interesting. Okay, so yes, like Liz said a minute ago, I'm going to talk about author collaborations and cross promotions, and she thought that would be something that most of you would find useful. I'm going to try and talk about how you would do those things and maybe why you should think about it if you haven't done already. So first test to see if I can get this to go to the next slide. Let me just press the right arrow, see if that works.
It's all the way up.
Right, oh yes, that worked for me. Can you see the second slide now, yeah?
I think that's always the problem with these.
Oh, no, it happened twice now. Are you hearing me okay, Liz?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
can you raise your volume though?
Hmm.
You're coming through, but the people behind me aren't hearing very well.
I think I had everything set at its maximum. I'll pull. Sorry, I'll try and pull this closer and then prop it. It's just been a slide of it. Yeah.
Another computer. We'll try to pair it with that.
How's that? Okay, I'll try and talk a bit louder. So I think Liz has given you most of my introduction that I've got here. But for my sins, I've been publishing since the very end of 2013 when I published my first novella. And I counted up, I was quite surprised to discover I've actually published 26 different novels, novellas and short stories. I have to say I tend to write at the short end, which is one way to be, well, I wouldn't say I've been prolific, but it's one way to be a bit more prolific if you write shorter. I've been writing for quite a while, so 26 books in a way isn't that many per year, but you know. I've also been a part of 9 anthologies when I counted, which again, I was surprised. I hadn't realised it had been so many. So that was quite interesting to me, actually, just even adding up the numbers.
Okay, so you just said you've been part of 9 anthologies?
Yeah, and I've organised 2 of them.
Okay, cool.
I've been doing that since quite early on, so before I really knew what I was doing. But yeah, and as Liz mentioned, I've got 3 pen names. So the one I started with, Roz Marshall, I kind of made the mistake of, I read in lots of different genres, so I write in lots of different genres. So Roz Marshall's a mixture of fantasy, science fiction. I've got some women's fiction sort of that veers into romance. So when I decided I wanted to write some Scottish historical romance, I started a new pen name, Bell McInnes, which is my middle name. And then more recently, when I've been focusing on cozy mystery, because we also bought in my Roz Marshall name are full of fantasy authors and so on. So I needed to focus that a bit more. So I've gone with initials there. So I'm RB Marshall for my cozy mystery. And I believe, am I correct that most of you guys are mystery writers of one description or another?
Yes. Yes, that's Sisters in Crime is mystery writers, some maybe suspense.
Yeah. Okay, so Liz was also saying something about your survey and that you've got a mixture of publishing types, but technically speaking, I'm actually a hybrid author because I think it was a couple of years ago now, a small Dutch publisher approached me about translating some of my women's fiction series into Dutch, and it's something I would never have done on my own, so I was quite happy to let her do that. And so I've got, I think, 5 books of that series now translated into Dutch. So technically speaking, I'm a hybrid author, but really, in reality, I'm pretty much indie. And the latest achievement, and probably the peak, pinnacle of the author career so far, was a couple of weeks ago when the anthology that Liz and I were in, and Erin, I think, was also in, I think I saw her in the room, managed to reach number 52 in the USA Today bestselling lists. So that was sort of something that had been an ambition of mine, and we managed to achieve that the other day with an anthology that I'd organised, and it was kind of the second one that I've organised. So we had a sort of practice run at Christmas time, and then this one we sort of kind of knew what we were doing a bit better and managed to make the list. So that's kind of where I'm at, and I'm not. I've been doing it for a long time, and one of the things I've done quite a lot of is what I'm going to be talking about today is the author collaborations. So let's just wait for the slide to change. So I'm going to talk about different types of collaborations and cross promotions that you might do. So there's straight cross promotions, and I'll describe what they are. There's swaps. You can do collaborative projects, a bit like the anthology. There's things that you can do on social media, or you can meet people there. You can meet people at conferences and collaborate there. And there are groups and organizations just like the one you guys are in just now for collaborating with people. So I'm going to talk about each thing in turn in a bit more detail when the next slide comes up. Okay, so my first thought was why? So some of you might be sitting there thinking, well, yeah, you know, so what? I should be spending my time writing. I shouldn't be worrying about collaborating. And to a point, there is a point in that you need to down and get your bum your seat and get some words out and get some pages written. But in order to move on to the next level of your writing, or just to help increase the fun aspect of it as well, it's good to network and to meet other authors. I was down last week at a conference down in London. I'm up just outside Edinburgh, and there was a lot of people down there that are kind of like, there was some people, one lady who's been #1 in the whole of the Amazon store with her book, and she's been in the top 10, I think, for most of this year with her main book, and she was one of the speakers at it. There was another couple of people there who again are producing, I don't know, 17 books a year or something like that, and in the top 100. E.L. James from 50 Shades of Grey was there, and I actually sort of know her because I'm in a Clubhouse room. So if you haven't heard of Clubhouse, it's a bit like Zoom actually, but just with audio. So there's a daily room at coffee time in the USA, morning coffee time, which is lunchtime for me. And E.L. James comes into that. So I felt like I know her because she comes into that room. So you can meet authors that are way above your tier at these sort of events. And then the other thing that happened at London was there ended up being about 20 of us, cozy mystery authors, all kind of sat down in the bottom left of the auditorium. So I got to know some of the other cozy mystery authors. And if I'm organising something, or if they're organising something, they now know that I'm a person that they could call on to be a part of something to do with cozy mystery. So there's various different reasons that it's a good idea to network with other authors. And then when you collaborate with each other, sorry, Liz?
I just want to emphasize that when you were at that conference, you weren't necessarily finding these people in the classes and in the panels, but outside. You were spending some time outside in the halls, or approaching people that you thought were cozy authors that you might strike a conversation up with or something.
Yes, there was a Facebook group for people who were coming to the conference. So somebody has suggested there about having a cozy mystery authors dinner. So that was kind of how that all snowballed and started. And I ended up organising it because nobody else was stepping up to the plate to organise it. But I kind of learned the value of that from, if you guys have heard of 20 books to 50k, they did a conference in London in 2018, actually. Oh, I've got the notebook, but I put it behind the computer to pop the computer up. So, yeah, they did a conference in London in 2018, and I, coming from Scotland, I had to go down the night before to get there in time for 9 o'clock start. So they'd organised a meetup for, it was when I was writing historical romances, so historical writers, and some of the people that I met then I'm still kind of social media friends with, or I still see at other conferences. So I learned the value of that there, and I didn't feel alone then when I arrived the first day and went into the first class. I wasn't on my own. So yeah, it's definitely a value, but it's not when you're sitting listening to somebody talking at you that you're doing the networking. It's over the coffee, or it's at dinner that night, or it's over going out for lunch or whatever. So so that's the sort of conferences side of things. And then
but you didn't, and I just like to emphasize, because the way I network with a lot of cozy authors and how I met you is through Facebook. You don't have that on your graphic, but I do mention it a lot when I talk about how I met other authors and got involved with cozy writing and self-publishing and stuff. So I think it's important, even though it might sound a little kind of juvenile, like, oh, I'm on Facebook all the time, but it is really a valuable place to find your tribe and to find other self-published writers or other crime writers, cozy writers, romance writers, and romance readers too, or cozy readers.
There's a useful group on Facebook. Is it Cops and Writers, I think it's called. So if you have questions about police procedure, you can put that into that group, for example. So it's not just networking, but you can gain knowledge that way as well. I think I do talk about social media in a slide or two's time. So, but yeah, definitely that's how I met Liz. And the other aspect to it from the cozy mystery point of view, I'm not so sure about other aspects of crime writing, but a lot of our readers skew to the old, well, mostly female and a bit older. So, and that is a what's the word, demographic that is on Facebook. We're probably not doing TikTok, but we'll be on Facebook. So depending on what you're writing and where your readership might be, might depend on which is the best social media. But when you are then doing some cross promotions with other authors, the benefit is, if it's not obvious, that you are then getting exposed to their readers, and we'll talk about how and or where in a minute, but you're getting access to their readership. So if you've got another cozy mystery author who you think writes books that are like yours, then it makes sense to try and network or to cross promote with them so that you have some sort of crossover of your readership. And it's also a way to level up your sales. For example, I featured somebody's book in my newsletter a while back, and I'm not sure if you're aware of Amazon Associates, but you get a little tiny percentage of the sale every time something sells, but you can also tell how many of something you've sold. And I shared somebody's book about a unicorn or something a while back, and I think I sold 30 of his books. That was an outlier. I don't normally sell quite as many as that, but I can quite often, if it's a 99 pence or an attractive enough book, I can sell sort of 5 or 8 of somebody else's book to my newsletter. So it definitely helps with leveling up your sales. You can also learn from other authors when you're networking. You can learn what works and what doesn't. I've done plenty of the what doesn't stuff in my time as well, and you can pick up tips and tricks for marketing. So I know even when I've talked to Liz and stuff, kind of, well, I say offline, but not here, but in Messenger, we've shared stuff that's worked for us in terms of marketing and so on. So I'm just waiting for the slide to change. So when should you be doing this? Now, if somebody is a kind of beginner author, if you haven't even got your first book out, you might think there's not much point in you spending time networking and collaborating. And up to a point, it does help if you've got a book there to do something with, but even before you start, it is recommended, if you can somehow, to try and start to build your readership by building your newsletter. I'm not going to talk particularly about newsletters today, but there are a couple of books I can recommend at the end. And I think Liz might be able to find somebody to talk about newsletters and that side of marketing who has more. I think
a lot of our authors are interested in that. So, I mean, I think it would be okay if you touched on it a little bit more in detail. You don't have to.
It's just, if you're going to be doing newsletters, it's all about automations and reader magnets and all that stuff. So that it's probably a session all in its own. About that, and there are people who've written books. I've got links to them at the end. So yeah, but so as a beginner author, if you haven't got all that many books under your belt, you can still start to build your readership. And if there's something that you can get involved in, if you haven't got money to get involved with it, perhaps you can still potentially offer your time or other skills. So you could offer to edit, or you could offer to proofread for somebody, or you might be good at graphics, so you could do graphics for the promotion, or you might be able to do social media sharing. So sharing about whatever it is on whatever social media networks you're on.
You're talking about getting involved with, for example, like an anthology like we did, and having, being in a group, finding a group of other people who want to put something like this together. And then even if you don't have a big readership, you don't have a large newsletter, mailing list to share, you can use other skills.
Yeah, no, exactly. So whatever level you're at, there's things that you can do to help. And one of the best talks, I think it was the London conference, the 20 books when I talked about, was by a guy called Barry Hutchison, who writes as J.D. Kirk. in crime. So you might have seen his books tend to dominate the UK charts. He writes about this rather irreverent cop from, I think it's from Inverness, up north somewhere. So, or no, sorry, Fort William, but yeah, Inverness somewhere. So yeah, he published his first books basically by bootstrapping, and he managed to do really well. He taught himself how to do Photoshop so he could make his own cover. He sort of did stuff for other authors to get promotions and so on, and that he did a really good talk about that at the 20 Books London conference. So it might well be on YouTube if you were to search for that. So Barry Hutchinson and Bootstrapping for Authors.
Roz,
mhm.
I'm sorry to keep interrupting you, but our connection's a little wonky. So could you speak a little slower, please?
Oh,
And
sorry.
and why don't you tell people just what 20 books to 50K is? Because I think a lot of people in Sisters in Crime might not know what that means and what they do outside of the Facebook group. And
Right,
that's a way to network and a way to meet other authors.
Yes, exactly, all of the above. So 20 books to 50K is, I think it started as a Facebook group, started by Michael Anderley and Craig Martell, who are both kind of science fiction and fantasy writers. And Michael Anderley, I think the story goes that he wrote 5 books and he was making however many thousands. And he realised if he multiplied it up and he had 20 books, he would be able to make $50,000 per annum, just by multiplying what he was doing. So that's where the 20 books to 50K comes from. And it gets abbreviated to 20 books because most people kind of, if you've heard of it, you know what we're talking about. So there's a Facebook group with a mine of information. If you have a question about publishing at all, if you go to that Facebook group and search, you will almost certainly find the answer to your question. And they get a bit snippy if you ask a question in the group and you haven't searched for it first. So just, do your homework. They also run a conference every year in Las Vegas in November. It's a massive conference. The group itself is one of the biggest author groups on Facebook. I've lost track, but it's at least 4,000 people, I think, that's on it. I don't know, could be 10 times that, could be more, but yeah, there's thousands of authors on the group, so there's a wealth of knowledge there. And Las Vegas, I don't know if anybody here has been to it, but I think it has like 2,000 people attending, something like that. And they have about, I might be wrong about, because I've not been. I think they have about 4 different streams that go on at the same time. So, there might be a new author stream, or there might be an audiobook theme, or a romance theme, or whatever. So there's maybe 4 different talks going on at a time all day. Or there's breakout sessions into the full streams and then back again. So, and most of the stuff is online. So if you YouTube search for 20 books to 50K, you can probably find some of their talks and see if there's something that interests you.
Yeah,
so if you're interested in joining an author group on Facebook, that's one of the biggest ones. So there's a lot of information there.
There's a lot of information, and also just to reiterate, they do run anthologies sometimes. They run conferences, and the people that speak at their conferences are very well known, especially in self-publishing. So they're people that actually have figured out a way to make money, and some of them a lot of money, selling their own books. So it's valuable if you're an indie author or just starting out to get involved and at least check out that group. There's just a wealth of information.
Yeah, so go back to the slide. If you are a kind of mid-list author or middling, so you've got some books under your light, mid-list usually means you're actually making a living at it. I'm kind of using it slightly more loosely just to mean that you're not a beginner, you've done more than a few books. So you can use the networking with other authors to help to boost a launch of your book. So rather than kind of just launching with a sort of bit of a fizzle, you can actually kind of boost the book and get a bit of momentum going, and sometimes the visibility of getting into the bestseller lists then sells more books just because people notice it in the list rather than knowing about it because they know of you. You can also, by collaborating with other authors, as I've already said, you can find new readers and you can refine your skills. So for example, the anthology that we were both in just recently, we've learned a lot about marketing through Facebook or book club or whatever from these other authors who were doing the different jobs or better at doing those things than I am and than Liz was. So, and then if you're kind of somebody who's is hitting the bestseller lists, some of those people still do some collaborations to, I think, partly to pay it forward. And as I've said, for the other ones, you can still use collaborations to boost your launch. So, for example, one of the things I do regularly is a thing called Zoe Bub, which is run by Zoe York, who's a best-selling romance author. And she, sorry, I've just realised my computer's unplugged. I better plug it in before it finishes battery. Yeah, she does that kind of out of the goodness of her heart, because she would probably be much better off by writing new books, but she takes some time out of her day and her month to run these programs to help other authors as well as herself. So just check that's the charger. Well, actually, it's not charging. Give me a sec, so I'll go and switch the switch on. Sorry.
Okay.
My computer's got a 19% battery. Yeah, that's it now. Sorry, I would have died. It was down to 17%, so I would have lost you very shortly if I hadn't done it. Right. So, where do you find other authors to collaborate, particularly if you, like me, live in the countryside and you're not near London or something like that where there's a lot going on? So we've kind of touched on this already, but a lot of the collaboration, particularly during lockdown, it was all happening online. So for social media, we've already discussed historical and then cozy mystery ones and then women's fiction as well. So there are groups for all different types of author, and then there are also the general groups like the 20 books to 50k, and there's also one if you're not exclusive to Kindle Unlimited to Amazon, then there's a book called called Wide for the Win, which gets abbreviated to WFTW. So Wide for the Win, if you are not exclusive to Amazon, is a great resource. So I'm what they call a wide author. So I sell my books on Apple and Google Play and Kobo and Barnes and Noble and other smaller stores, as well as on Amazon. The bulk of my income and most wide authors still comes from Amazon, but we also get income from these other places. So Wide for the Win. And there are hundreds of other Facebook groups, but just find the ones that you click with. There's also, I know of some cozy mystery authors that are on Discord. If that's something you do, then you'll meet a different set of authors there. So it's a different reader, different authorship, so therefore different readership to get in touch with. TikTok is something that has been talked about at all the conferences for the last year or so. I've had a look at it. It's not for me. You may have looked at it, or your teenagers may be doing it or something, but if it's for you, certainly for romance, it seems to be doing really well. But we're not writing romance, so yeah, your mileage may vary and all that. And I mentioned briefly about Clubhouse as well, which is it's an app on my phone. I'm going to try to hold up my phone so you can see it. Anyway, yeah, it's an app on my phone, and it's like Zoom, but just with the audio. So if I'm doing something else, I can be sweeping the yard and still listening to the Clubhouse chat on my phone.
Can you explain a little bit about what Clubhouse is? It's an app, but it's people form into groups of interest to them. So you're in a Clubhouse chat of authors, correct?
Yes, yeah. So the one I'm in is called there's a few, but there's one called the Author Conference. That's the one that I meet. It meets at I think it's I think it's 8 a.m. Eastern. I think it is every day, which is 1 p.m. British summertime for me. And it's just a chit chat, but there are best-selling authors like Zoe York that I talked about, and Pamela Kelly, and E.L. James is in.
So what is the format when you're on a Clubhouse chat?
It varies per room. Sometimes, like with that, the author conference started as a conference, so it was an online conference during lockdown where there were speakers, a bit like you would at a normal conference, but it was literally just audio, so there were no slides, you were just listening. And obviously taking notes if you wanted to. The format for the lunchtime chat, or the coffee chat rather, is if the people who run it will say, has anybody got any author questions? And then somebody will chip in and say, oh, I've got a question. And then if somebody's got an answer, then they will chip in to answer. So it's just, and there's sort of etiquette, you know, you can't all talk at once. So if somebody starts speaking, then you don't try and talk at the same time.
So it's a little bit like a podcast where you're listening, but you have the ability to ask questions because it's live. And most of the people that are running it are the experts. Is this this conference one? Is it just indie writers, or is it mystery writers or cozy writers?
So all of the above. The author conference I talked about was initially a conference, so somebody was speaking for half an hour or 3/4 of an hour or whatever, and I think they would be doing questions at the end. But the daily chat is kind of a free-for-all. They call it popcorn. So I don't know if that's the term that you guys know in the States. That basically you can ask a question, you can speak, or you can answer a question if you've got an answer. But a lot of people just sit in the audience and listen rather than being on the stage. They call it to speak. So and then at 5 o'clock my time on a Monday, which is 12 noon Eastern, I think, there's a Cozy Mystery Writers Clubhouse group. There's romance. What's it called? Romancing the something. There's a romance authors group that happens every week. There's writers on the storm. There's another one. You know, there's regular ones that happen.
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you, but I know we're having audio issues, so I want to make sure everybody's understanding what you're saying, and so I'm kind of doing a little synopsis. But so your clubhouse, it's more of the networking. So it's mostly networking. You're not in a clubhouse that they're asking for submissions or talking about doing anthologies or newsletter swaps. It's mostly writer questions, or maybe craft questions, or marketing and advertising questions.
Yeah, all of that. Yes, so it's a great place to learn and to meet other authors. But some of the people that I've met on Clubhouse were some of the people that I met up with in real life in London. Right. So, and I do have Clubhouse. I don't use it a lot, but I'm not in that one. There's another one that is just for cozy writers, and sometimes I listen. And one of the interesting tidbits I picked up was people that use something called Brain FM, which is like something that you can listen to that kind of stimulates your creativity. So the people in that chat, they were talking about these people who do rapid release and who are writing a lot. And one of the ways they do it is by, either they meditate before they write, or they use this technology to get them into a space in their brain where they're really concentrating and really able to be creative. So I found that was an interesting little tidbit to pick up. Okay, yes. So aside from all the social media stuff, you can also meet authors in person, like you guys are doing today, at a local writers group at conferences, as we've discussed. A group of people from the clubhouse room that I was talking about, the lunch, coffee chat one, they had a writing retreat in Italy organised by Rosie, who's an author who was in the Christmas anthology that I ran. She lives in Italy and she's an event planner. And so she organised an author retreat, and I think there was about a dozen of them, and they seem to have had a brilliant time. And obviously they've met in person, and who knows what they'll go on to do together. Do you guys know of Nanowrimo? Or I think people say it different ways, but National Novel Writing Month in November?
Yes.
So that there are local groups during Nanowrimo. So like I could travel into Edinburgh and go to a coffee shop and meet with the local Nanowrimo group. So I guess there's ones in most of the big cities, but again, it's whether it's something that works for you. I've also met other authors. I tried going to in-person book signings. So there are events that are organised where you take along your paperbacks and readers are supposed to turn up and buy your books. What I discovered, so this is kind of one of these things where I tried something and it didn't really work for me, but it does work quite well, I think, for people, for probably two groups of authors in my opinion / experience. People who are writing romance, particularly the steamy kind, because it's quite difficult to advertise that because the advertisers won't let them advertise when it's a bit dodgy. so they basically connect directly with their readers and sell directly to the readers at these signing events. So there'll be one in London, or there'll be one in Edinburgh or Los Angeles, or I don't know, different places all over the place. As well as, sorry, there are also book signings where you go along to your local bookshop. That's a whole other thing. And then fantasy writers also seem to do quite well because they go along to likes of Comic-Con. So you're basically selling in person. So again, that's not for everybody, but it is also a way to meet other authors. And I've met a few authors at a couple of signings that I went to that, again, I'm still kind of in touch with on Facebook mainly, and that I see at other conferences that I go to now. So there's lots of different ways and opportunities to meet other authors. I think I've got there in the slide, there's your Sisters in Crime group, and there's the Alliance of Independent Authors and so on. So there are different ways to meet other people. I'll just wait for the next slide. The computer is very slow. So, yeah. I'll press this again, I'll probably jump 2 slides now. I've turned off the left-hand slide, so I can't actually remember what's coming left, so I can't even, let me see if I can get it back up.
Trying to get the next slide up.
Yeah, sorry, technology, it's the usual, isn't it? At least the husband stopped cutting the grass. Yes. I've just got flies buzzing around now. You must have
Maybe if you reload.
Or no, that if I do that, well, you'll be waiting 10 minutes because.
Oh, okay.
I think I probably need to restart the computer. I did shut down a load of stuff while we were starting the meeting, but it's just really slow. Oh, what was that? Something flashed up and went away again here.
I'm going to take you off screen share and maybe.
Oh, it's come back up now. Here we go.
There it is.
So is it the why? Well, that was the first one, was it?
Yeah.
Specs on.
Hi, Charlie, how did you get that mark on the screen?
So where
was it you? Yeah, I have it. Yeah. Yeah, we're recording and I have it, but if I would have to take her off and then bring it up.
I think I've jumped 2 now, but I've just got.
All right, well, this looks
slow.
new.
Yeah, no, that's 2 on it. I'm just going to go back 1. Yeah, here we go. So, okay, so your options for collaborating with other authors, and this is what I'm going to talk about sort of over the next few slides in a couple of minutes. So the things that I've kind of listed that were my kind of brain dump or my sort of brainstorming about what the collaboration opportunities you have are group cross promotions, and I've organized those in the past, and those are usually, there's something I would recommend doing. Newsletter swaps, similarly, I would recommend those. There's a thing that we call takeovers, so we'll talk about that in a minute. Co-authoring, which I hadn't originally got on my list, but when I went to look for books to recommend to you, those came up, and I was like, oh, okay. So I'll briefly talk about that, but then anthologies, which we've again touched on, and shared worlds. So those are the things that I kind of see as your opportunities to collaborate with other authors. And just hopefully get to the next slide now, which I think is how. Unless I've jumped on twice. So how would you go about doing it? So the first thing you need to do is to find a promotion or a collaboration that works for you and for your schedule and for your budget and your books. I can't see what the last word is there because you guys are covering it. So in order to start getting involved in doing collaborations, you usually need a newsletter. So again, this is almost like a chicken and egg. So maybe we should have had newsletter talk first and then had this one. You'll usually need a newsletter because part of the thing with sharing with other authors is that your part of the bargain is that you have to share whatever it is with your readers. So on Facebook, if you're using Facebook or Twitter, it's limited how much access you'll get to your readers because they don't show it to everybody, and they want you to pay money to boost posts and things. So sending it out to your newsletter, you're in charge of sending it, and hopefully you get enough engagement with the newsletter that you're getting good rates of open and clicks and so on. Generally, you'll also need a social media presence, so perhaps a Facebook page about your author presence and so about your books. And generally, it helps to have at least one book to promote. You'll get most benefit if you have at least one series, in my opinion, because often what we do is we promote the first book in the series either by putting it free or by reducing the price to 99 pence or £2.99 or whatever is a price reduction that's attractive to readers. And then the idea is that when they paid for or read this first book, they like it enough that they then go on and read the rest of your series. So if the first book was free, you'll make the money on the read through, we call it, for the rest of the series. So a lot of the stuff that I do, it's about hooking readers with whatever it is that's in the promotion or the anthology or the shared world thing. And then you want them to go on and read your other books from there.
This is something that I think works better for indie authors or self-published authors who have decided that they're going to write a series. I think that one of the things with people I've met in Sisters in Crime that's a little bit different, even if they are self-publishing, is that I think more people here do standalone. So I'm going to jump in and say that when you do these kind of things and you're finding other people to collaborate with in your genre, in your subgenre, that it is really helpful, and you're going to get the best results if you have more than one book, because a lot of times
if you've only got one book and you make it free, you're basically making no money, and you haven't.
You'll make more money, but also a lot of these newsletter swaps
no money. If you've only got one book and you make it free, you're making no money at all.
Right. If you're
you're gaining readers, but you've nothing else to send them to, so it's a bit pointless.
Right. Exactly. A typical newbie kind of mistake is to set their one book free and just, look at their bestseller tag that they got in their subgenre on Amazon and be thrilled, but they didn't make any money. So that's where building a series and having something else to sell is really important in these types of things.
Yeah. And in terms of writing standards, sorry, I should have said as well, if you're not self-published, you don't have much control over your pricing, so it is harder to do these things if you're not self-published. But your contract might allow you to do stuff on the side or to do something under a different pen name. So again, it's still worth knowing about these things. But I definitely would recommend, if at all possible, writing in series, because if you think about the books that you read, like the Jack Reachers or the is it Mary Scarpetta or whatever, all the or there's different series, even in Chadpa or Harry Potter. You enjoyed the first book and you went on and you read right to the end of the series. So that's the way, and then you can promote that first book in particular and you catch your readers that way. But when you're getting involved with other authors, try and make sure that you're putting your best foot forward. So you're being professional. If there's a deadline, you deliver stuff on time, and if something happens, if there's a catastrophe, you get COVID or somebody dies, then communicate with the organisers so that they don't think you've just dropped off the planet. I think I can share this because the person isn't here to overhear, but we had the anthology we were just running, we had 21 books scheduled for that, and I had one author who got sick and didn't deliver her book on time, and it was like, oh, but I'll get it to you on Monday, or I'll get it to you on Thursday. And in the end, it got way past the deadline for when I needed the book. And I only had 20 stories. Everybody else had sent their stories. So to make up to the 21 that we promised, I ended up writing a short story in literally 2 days to add at the end of the anthology to make up for this person who didn't pull their weight. But it was a lot of stress for me and a lot of hassle because this person didn't, you know, they basically ghosted me for a week at the end, and I was just like, oh. So, you know, be professional. And also, if you're providing, you're giving something free, or you're reducing the price of something, or you're putting something in an anthology, just because it's going to be free or cheap, don't think of it that way, because that is your hook to get your readers into your series, or to add people to your newsletter list, to get people to enjoy you as an author. It might be the only time somebody ever comes across you as an author. So make sure that you're putting your best foot forward and giving your best work. Let's try and get this next slide up.
Right, and another thing that indie authors, self-published authors can do, and maybe some traditional published authors can if they have maybe some rights to their ebooks, is that you can add the links in. So when you're in an anthology like this, after your last page, then you have your little author bio, you have links to your maybe Amazon page, or maybe your newsletter link where somebody can click right from their Kindle and sign up for your newsletter. So you get them on your mailing list.
Yeah, exactly. So that's often what we've jumped 2 slides now. So I'd like to see if I can get back to the original one. My first slide that I'm trying to get to is about cross promotions, which I did used to organise. Yes, here it is. So on the left of the screen, I think, yes, it should be. This is an example of something I had in my newsletter a couple of weeks back, because I was part of a 99-cent Cozy Mystery sale. So books were being advertised that were reduced, or that are always, but generally they were reduced to 99 cents for a weekend, and everybody that got their book featured on the sale page, so there was a page with lots of different book covers in it that people could click on, everyone that got featured on the page was supposed to then share with their newsletter. And the idea is that you get a bump in your sales. And I think we definitely saw a bump in the sales. This was for the anthology, because we had it at 99 pence. So saw a boost in the numbers when we were doing that. So again, I'm not seeing, I think I can switch you guys to the right hand side. So let me just see. Yes, okay, so I can't see you guys anymore, but I can see my slides at least. So a cross promotion is something where lots of people are involved. Generally, there's a web page for readers to go to with lots of different book covers on it. And then when they click on the cover, if it's a sales promotion, then they are offered a chance to buy the book. And it can be a free book, so it can be about free books. If it's a newsletter builder, it's a whole different thing. But when they click on the book, in order to get the book free, they have to sign up for your newsletter. So this is how you can start to build your readership thanks to other authors. So by accessing their reader list. So everybody sends out to their newsletter list about these free books that we can get. People click on the cover, and in order to get the free book, they sign up to the other author's newsletter. Whether they stay or not, that's another story. But yeah, at least a percentage of them will stay, and that is actually part of your job as an author then, is to give enough value to those readers that they'll want to stay on your mailing list. And the final point in the hot thing I've got is free book blasts. So I talked about Zoe York and romance books a short while ago. What she does is she organised this page, and there were literally 600 books on it the last time she did it, and they were all free. So you were giving your readers a great deal. You were saying to them, go to this page and you'll get your choice of 600 different romance books in lots of different subgenres of romance, and they're all free, but for one day only. And the first time I did that, I think it was 1,500 downloads of my historical romance book. And then over the next days, I got something like 30 sales of the follow-on books, which is why you do it. So Zoe York's, we call it Zoe Bub. If you've heard of BookBub, they're the biggest email newsletter advertising platform. So usually if you get a BookBub, you'll get 1,500 at least, or thousands of downloads of your book. And if it's a sales, you'll get thousands of sales usually as well. So Zoe's promotion is of that level. There's one just started recently for Cozy Mysteries. So I think there's one in July and one in October, which is smaller, but it's starting to build. So depending on your genre, I also know of one for science fiction and fantasy, sort of one-day sales. So it's something that if you're networking with the other authors, you'll find out about it. I found out about the Zoe Bub on Clubhouse. So you find out about these things by the networking that we talked about right at the beginning.
Right, and this is just to make it clear, you would submit your ebook to a third party. Whoever's running this has a third party that holds them and builds this landing page that everyone then shares in their newsletter or maybe on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. And readers can go to that page and choose from all these different books. And when they click on the book, there's a buy-in kind of. They have to trade their email address for the book, correct?
If it's a newsletter builder, or either pay money if it's a sales promotion, or just download it.
Sometimes we're just giving them away for free.
Yeah.
As
the free book blast, the final point there, the Zoe Bubs, the idea is the free book, but that's where the only value to you as an author is if you have other books for them to read. So like I said, I gave away 1,500 free books, but then I sold about 30 of the follow-on books in the next few days. So that's why you do that. So the how, you either do it through, my bottom point there, through various people on Facebook that organize things for free, like the Zoe Bub, or you can use a service like BookFunnel, who I think are a very good value for money. So they host group promotions of either sales promos or newsletter builders. They post, you can upload your book to there. It's just really easy. It just makes it really easy. And they do a really, and also from the reader's point of view, when the reader chooses to download your book, they make it really easy for the reader to do that. And if the reader can't work out how to get the book onto their Kobo or their Nook or their Kindle, then they have a help service to help do that. So to me, they're worth every dollar that I spend on them every year. A similar service is Story Origin. They do sort of very similar to what BookFunnel does, but they're newer. And there's also Prolific Works, who don't, I think they only do free books, or they did last time I looked. So yeah. And then there's also Sweeps, who are, that's a guy who you pay, and he offers a Kindle as a prize and a bunch of free ebooks. So I think it's about $40 or $60 that you pay, and then it's the same idea. Everybody sends his page, this sales page, to their newsletters. But there's two things that with him is either a newsletter builder, so you're spending say $60 and you're getting maybe 1,500 names for your newsletter list, or what we call a BookBub builder. That's basically getting people to follow you on the BookBub platform, which is the advertising. And that's a whole another, and again, that's probably for another talk. But as a way to build your list to start with, Book Sweeps is quite a good way to give it a kick start. Like some of the promotions might say, "Oh, we want you to have a list of at least 500 or 1,000." The problem is that a lot of these people are freebie seekers, and they'll unsubscribe almost as soon as they subscribe to your list. So again, it's your job through what you're doing with your newsletter to try and retain them, and that's a whole nother talk. So that's the different kinds of cross promotions. And then I also talked about newsletter swaps. If I can get this slide to come back up again. Oh, my computer has been so slow.
When we're coming,
was that Liz? Sorry.
I was just going to say we usually go to about noon, so I'd like to leave some time for questions. So how many more slides do you have? Or I don't want to rush you.
Well, yeah. Let's just keep going and have the questions at the end. Then no comments. So here's an example of a newsletter swap. where I featured Liz's book, one of her chiropractor books. So that's the section from my newsletter where I featured a book. And she, if we were doing a swap, then the idea is that she would have featured my book, not necessarily on the same day. So I perhaps featured it, I can't read that lately, but it might have been 99 pence that particular day, or it might have been a new release. Actually, yes, it was a new release, just reading my text here. So you can either use a newsletter swap to boost your launch, or to try and get some extra sales if you've reduced your book to 99 pence or 2.99 or whatever the price reduction is. So newsletter swaps are good, and like I say, you can get quite a number of sales if the author has a good newsletter and your book is a good fit for their newsletter. Book Funnel will help you to organize these things, newsletter swaps, as will Story Origin. Most of the genre groups on Facebook they have like a weekly threads or a monthly thread for organizing swaps. And you can also, you might just do it because somebody's a friend and you see they've got a new book out and you're like, well, I'm just going to feature their book because it's good for my readers and it's good for my friends. So again, going back to the networking thing, it's a good idea to have your friends. So my next slide is about takeovers, and of all the things I'm talking about, this is the thing where I'm not convinced about the benefits of these. What a takeover is basically, well, it's also called a Facebook party. So you take over, usually it's somebody else's reader group on Facebook, and again, that's a whole other thing about having readers groups. And you'll get half an hour or an hour to share with the readers, and you'll do posts like the one, I don't know if you can see my mouse moving, but the one with the e-reader and the coffee cup right here. So that was me sharing about my Corpse at the Castle book, and I can't remember what I said about it. Oh yeah, no, so it was a giveaway first. I was giving away a copy of that book. But you can do fun posts like, where are you from? What's your favourite hobby? What's your favourite cupcake? I don't know, whatever. You can do an extract from your book. You can, and then you share links usually at the end with where they can find you on Amazon or so, whatever. And the aim is to find new readers or to sell a few books. So the top image there, the top graphic, is the timings for our release party that we did for the anthology that Liz and I were in recently. And we all had half an hour, and we've got the readers, and we had a bunch of readers came along. I thought at Christmas time that we sold quite a few books from the party we did at Christmas time. Not quite so sure with this one. Maybe everybody had already bought it. So yeah, of all the things that you can do, I'm not 100% so sure about whether takeovers are worth it, but they can be quite fun to do. And if you're the sort of person that's outgoing and you enjoy meeting readers, then this can be a good thing to do. So another collaboration thing is co-authoring. So this, when I was looking for books about collaborations, this is what came up. It's not something I've done, so can't say much about it, but I've got examples. So James Patterson, for example, is well known for having ghostwriters write his books. And I hadn't actually realised that he does put some names on their books. I thought he published them as if it was him. But quite a lot of time, big writers will hire ghostwriters to basically so they can publish more books in a year under their name and keep the readers happy, but not have to be having the hands at the keyboards all the time themselves. So James Patterson's definitely got that down, a fine art. I mentioned Michael Anderle, that's the bottom image, it's kind of underneath there. Briefly, he was one of the founders of the 20 books to 50k group. And Sarah Northcote, I met her in Edinburgh at a conference. So I've met both her and Michael Anderle in person. So she writes kind of under his name and he publishes. So it's like an editorial partnership, if you like. And I think he kind of does some editing and gets the cover organised and does some advertising and takes 50% of the profits for it, whereas Sarah's done all the work. So that's one kind of model of doing co-authoring. Then on the right, Laura Greenwood and Skye Mckinnon, who I met first of all at a book signing, they co-write, and I think, like the one underneath, who are the best-selling authors, they're two sisters that were at the conference in London there. I think what these guys do is they take a chapter about, so somebody writes chapter 1 from the hero's point of view, and then the other person writes chapter 2 from the heroine's point of view, and then back to the hero, and so on. I think that's how they do it. But there are different different models for how you can make these things work. Sometimes it's that one person does the writing and the other does the editing or whatever. Regardless of what you're doing, if you are going to be co-authoring with somebody else, even if it's your best friend or your sister, make sure there's a contract. Things go wrong, people die, you don't want to lose control of your intellectual property just because sort of there's a falling out or whatever. So if there's a contract, it just helps to make things clear and simple and keep things right. And I'm just trying to get the next slide to come up. Okay, so anthologies. This is maybe the thing I know the most about. Oh no, I just jumped 2 slides, typical. So yeah, anthologies. We yeah, here we are. Hopefully we'll stay here for a minute. So usually an anthology has between 3 and 20 or more authors in it. There was one recently where they were raising money for Ukraine and there was 70 authors in it. I'm glad I wasn't organising that one. There are obviously economies of scale, and you can share the tasks of promoting your work amongst the authors involved, and you're also sharing your readerships. So we had about 21 authors for the 2 anthologies that I've run, and an anthology will usually have an aim. So the Ukraine one, the aim there was to raise money for charity. The Christmas one was partly about me kind of learning the ropes as well, but we were hoping to reach new readers and make some money. And the Midsummer one, we were aiming to make the USA Today bestseller list, which we did. So there's usually a reason for doing an anthology, and it's a great way of meeting other authors and of learning different skills and learning different marketing strategies. And then my computer's going for a walk. Yes, it's learning from the different authors. So that's anthologies. Similar but a bit different is shared worlds. So on the right hand side is a book that I wrote in somebody else's universe. So it's my fantasy series starts with this book, which is written in a universe, in inverted commas, called Feyland. So it's a sort of scenario, if you like, and I've written my stories on this based on this other author's scenario. The first book actually went into an anthology, which is how I started, and then I enjoyed writing it, and I could see, basically, I saw a whole series arc. So that first book I wrote was just a short story in an anthology. I could see the whole series from there, and then the 4th book also went into a different anthology. That's 2 of the 9 anthologies I talked about I've been in, plus the 2 I've organised. So there's a shared world when you're writing kind of under somebody else's rules. And there's also kind of a shared premise. So the one I've got on the top left, that's somebody I know from my clubhouse room, Bella Falls, and she was writing with other authors. So they all published their own books. I think we did like one a week or one a fortnight with the same series, if you like, series name, but different stories written by different authors. And then each author would then promote, they would send out to the email list, and they would promote on social media about the other authors' books as they were getting released every week or every fortnight or whenever it was. So it's a good way to, again, collaborate and to meet other authors and to give a boost to your books. With me, I've gained some of Anthea's readers for the unicorn books, and plus she's probably gained some of mine, vice versa. So it can be a good way to get your books out there and learn more about the ropes. I think the anthologies are good for that too. So after hearing all these things and seeing all that, I don't know if you think, but are collaborations for you? What I would like you to think about is to be strategic. And I'll go back a slide again. Can you afford it? So sometimes there's a buy-in for an anthology. The services like BookFunnel and MailerLite for your mailing list and so on, they all have a cost. So if you're on a tight budget, then in my opinion, BookFunnel and MailerLite or one of the other mailing list providers, MailerLite are better value than MailChimp, which you may have heard of. That's a good way to start, and you'll get a lot of opportunities to network just by using BookFunnel. Don't spend what you can't afford. There's plenty of free stuff on Facebook, for example, and again, probably elsewhere like Twitter or Discord. It's just, I just don't do these things. And think about whether it's going to work for you as an author. Is it the correct genre? So I don't want to go having a promotion with other crime authors, even with my cozy mysteries, if they're doing like dark crimes and they're and my cozy mystery authors are looking for something nice and kind of fluffy and happy and cheerful. So think about where you're promoting it and what it will look like. If you also bots is a terminology that you may not be, if you think about an Amazon page, or I think Apple and Barnes and Noble have it as well, where readers who bought this book also bought, and then they've got a whole strip of other books that people might buy, which you would hope would include the rest of the books in your series, but make sure that it is books in your genre. If you've only got one book, is it appropriate to be doing something like we were talking about, where you're having to make that book free or really cheap, because the benefit is usually to get the sell through to your other books? Is your book suitable, and is it good enough to hook readers into your series? So if you've had a series published at full price and people are buying the first book and then they're not going on to buy the second book, then that indicates there's a problem with the first book. So you never need to work on that book before you start spending money to try and promote that book or to get into an anthology or something. So think about whether it's the right thing for you at this point in your author career. And the final slide that comes back up was just some further reading. So the books I found are mainly about the things I haven't talked about, which was about the mailing lists. So there's Mailing Lists Unboxed and Newsletter Ninja, books I've read and I recommend if you want to learn about mailing lists. On the left, I found there's a book by somebody else I've met at a conference, Erica Everest. She's written a book about MailerLite. I presume that does a good job, but I haven't read that one. And then the top left book, it's probably the one you should start with if this is all sounding a bit new to you. It's by David Goglin, who's an Irishman with a big white beard, and he also has a free series of videos for starter authors called Starting From Zero. So if you Googled for Starting From Zero and David Goglin, his name, you would find this video series, which is basically how to get started as an author. But this book, Let's Get Digital, I think he gives it out as part of the course, or it may be free anyway. It was the thing I read that convinced me that self-publishing is the way to go, that I just never looked at doing crowdpub, I'm just not interested. So if you're interested in digital publishing and self-publishing, then that's a really good resource to get you started, that I would recommend. And I think that's the final slide. So we can probably go to some questions now, unless Liz has got any other admin stuff to do. Let's see if I can get you guys back on. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, I'm trying to get my screen back. Sorry, I don't know why I'm telling it. Yes, I want you to stop, but it's not.
Can I stop my screen share? I might be able to stop my screen share now. Oh yeah, stop share, yeah, it is.
Okay, I had a question in the chat.
Okay.
It's do you have separate newsletters for separate genres? In other words, is there a newsletter for cozy mystery and a newsletter for romance?
Yes, that's a good question. I hope none of you guys will end up having to know this, but what I do is I have some readers who read everything. So I write a sort of generic newsletter with some romance stuff, some cozy mystery stuff or whatever in it. I then do, and I send that to the people I think are interested in everything. I then take a copy of that, so duplicate, so a second duplicate thing, and I take out anything that's kind of too romancy or whatever, and I just include the cozy mystery stuff, and I send that to the cozy mystery readers minus everybody that I already sent it to. So it's a bit technical here. So said it's a new bunch of cozy mysteries, but there's some people who might be in more than one list, so I kind of minus the people I've already sent it. And then if I'm also sending it to historical romance readers, then I do a third copy and do something similar with that. So it's similar, but yeah, I do tweak it for the different genres.
So the answer is yes.
Yes, basically.
But you use your newsletter platform like MailerLite to help you funnel the newsletter or separate your newsletter subscribers into different genres and help you email out to them.
Yeah, when they sign up, if they sign up as from the fantasy group, then they get put into a fantasy group, and if they sign up from their historical romance, they sign up from cozy mystery, they're into a cozy mystery section. So I know where they come from, so I can portion where I'm sending to from there.
Right. How many members here have? I know some people have jumped off already. How many have newsletters? By show of hands, or you can use a little reactions, thumbs up. So nobody has a newsletter?
Yeah. Okay, let's see.
And you do?
I've got one.
Okay. Have you ever done a newsletter swap? Is that familiar to you?
I've done a book sweeps. I had a marketing person tell me to do that, and I got about 300 people on my list by that, just for a first time and just for one book. So, yeah.
Okay. Have you used any of the other platforms like BookFunnel or Story Origin?
No, I use I write my newsletter on Wix, my website provider.
Right.
Yeah.
Does anyone here use BookFunnel or Story Origin? Because Roz went over a lot of stuff, and I'm wondering how familiar you all are with some of these platforms that are basically used to share, mostly, ebooks. You can't really send a paperback through email, but nobody in the group uses those platforms.
Not now.
I have them, but I've never used them for myself.
I have a group on Facebook that I belong to called World War II Authors. And we have one member who is very, very active in putting together these anthologies and these, group things. And I participated in a couple, but since I don't have but one World War II book, I haven't done very many.
Yeah. Does anyone here have a BookBub page?
BookBub pages.
No? Goodreads?
I have one, but I haven't been active on it in a while.
I have Goodreads. I do, and I do reviews of anytime I read a book, I post a review on Goodreads.
Right. Because some of what Roz was talking about, you can join, I think she was called them Cozy Bubs or Zoe Bubs. I joined one, and as a result, my BookBub followers went from something like 11 to 500. So many people got involved. So many readers decided to pick up those books that were involved in this promotion. And as a side promotion, they'll say something like, they'll run contests like, oh, you'll get a free, you'll get a free ebook or bookmarks, or there were different things being offered. And for that side promotion, if you went to your BookBub page and then followed the authors who were involved in that promo, then you would get like another 10 entries into their contest to win. And actually that contest had several things in it, several ebooks and pot of tea, because it was cozy readers. So pot of tea and cozies and, like cozy bookmarks and stuff. So that really worked well. I haven't done any BookBub advertising, but I have a lot more followers now. So that's one thing and that one, there was an upfront cost of, I think, $15. So for $15, I got a lot of BookBub followers. So, and
the reason to get the BookBub followers is because whenever you bring out a new book, BookBub will email all your followers at no cost to you to say, oh, this person, this author's got a new book out. You can also pay them to do a promotion, so maybe like a week before your book comes out, if it's on a pre-order, and they'll advertise your pre-order things as well. So that the more but you need 1,000 followers to be eligible for that. So there is an advantage to having BookBub followers, and it's worth paying $15 to kind of build that up, because it then helps your future launches. So that's why.
Right, and there's no charge to go to BookBub and sign up for an author page.
No.
So, and then if you don't get BookBub, the newsletter or the emails, it used to be, BookBub used to be years ago, it was just for self-published works, but it's not anymore. And, I try not to even open them sometimes because my Kindle is full. But I've gotten some really, really cool deals, like Walter Mosley, Octavia Butler, if you know her, she's a sci-fi writer, but she's deceased now. I forget, I've gotten some very well-known authors selling their ebooks for, some of them are 99 cents, some of them are $2.99. And the thing with traditionally published authors who are selling ebooks, a lot of them are expensive. Like, they are not giving their books away. So when I get a BookBub, deal on someone like that, I jump on it. But so it's, works both ways. I like BookBub. Okay, so is anyone on Discord? Does anyone here use that?
I don't even know what it is.
It's another platform, kind of like Facebook. It doesn't have pictures. I have gotten on Discord because of that one, the one woman who ran the promo I was just talking about. She has a Discord page, and we'll sometimes like email out. I find it very difficult to use, other than just reading what someone just posted to me that I got notified in my email. So it's just another platform where people can get together. I know people that have Patreon. I listen to podcasts because, well, my friends know I'm a Trekkie, so I listen to Star Trek podcasts, and some of them have Patreon pages, or you buy them through Patreon subscriptions, and then you get on their Discords. So I mean, it's communities, shared communities. So it's another place, but it's another thing to learn. And to me, I don't get it. I mean, I can't figure it out, but I know authors and cozy authors are there. And so Rose also talked about the Facebook party. Has anyone been involved in one of those? No, a takeover? And this is where, there's already a group existing where you will go in and say, there's a lot of cozy reader groups. So there's a lot of cozy, there's a lot of Facebook groups that cater to people who like to read cozies. And cozy authors are sometimes allowed to post their new books, their new launches in the group. And you can go in and with some of them are open to cozy authors taking over for a period of time. It can be a whole day, it can be a couple of hours. And then sometimes, like Roz was saying, you'll offer them something in terms of, a free ebook, or run like a little contest on a post, but you're posting throughout the period if you're on for a couple of hours. Or I've done a few with the anthologies I've been in, and usually you take a half hour or an hour and you submit posts that are specific to your part in the anthology, your story, or your world. And I'm always too discombobulated to offer anything for free, but usually you're trying to interact with a lot of these readers, some of whom have already read your book or had purchased the anthology and are excited to meet you as an author. So even though I don't think it's the best way to sell a lot, on one of them we did 2 takeovers for this anthology that just launched, and on one of them I did sell a few books. So so it's more kind of like PR, getting to meet your readers, and some of them will join your Facebook page, my Facebook author page. So I noticed a few of them went over to my Facebook author page. So it's more increasing your readership with that kind of stuff. All right, now I guess I've talked enough. Does anybody have any other questions for Roz? Yeah. Well, I know a lot of people have jumped off. You can feed back to me. She did give a lot of information. Maybe we need to do another Zoom with some, maybe on newsletters and talking a little bit more in detail about what exactly these platforms are and how they work and how they integrate with like a newsletter or a newsletter swap.
And welcome what do you call them, automations as well. Welcome
Right.
sequences. Yeah, that's there's a
Right,
It's a
part
whole-
of getting something like MailerLite is you can set up a series of emails to go out when someone joins your newsletter, so they're not ignored. So you don't lose that person because you didn't have time to keep track of. You set up automatic emails to go out. And I have a series of, I think, 3 or 4. And one of them asked my readers, do you want to be an advanced reader? Do you like to read? Do you want to read my stuff for free and maybe review it or feed back to me and give me some criticism? So before I launch anything, I get feedback. And I've had some of them where, they do my final editing, they'll be proofreading after it's gone through my editor. And maybe I've made some changes, but she's not a proofreader. She's edited it, and I always do a final read through. But sometimes I send it out to 3 or 4 eagle eyes that I've met through asking them that question in the automation. So those stuff that's running in the background can be really important. All right.
Because I'm going to have to head off just now anyway, because I'm going out tonight to a concert. So thank you very much for having me here, and
Thank you for coming.
Interesting, at least. Sorry about the technical problems, but that's part of the course really for anything like this.
Yeah, well, I have the slides, so I can email out the slides. Excuse me, and I'll get up the I'll get the recording on YouTube as soon as I can.
Okay, thank you very much. Then bye everyone.
Hi, Rose.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Bye. See you all next month. See you all at Off the Shelf in 2 weeks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for letting me join.
You're welcome. Bye.